discuss a little bit in what kind of ecosystems unicorns usually born. Before we start, I have to apologize. I will be alone today. So there were supposed to be two more speakers. Actually, one of them, Alexander Borodich, has the office of his startup in Bahrain. He recently opened it, but unfortunately both of them could not be here. So probably the first lesson learned is never trust them completely, because you never know where they can lead you. So I'll be here today alone. And the session, I guess, will be a little bit shorter, so it won't be until 50 minutes, maybe for 30 or something like that. So before I start speaking about the unicorns themselves, I just want to mention very quickly our organization, Center for Entrepreneurship. We've been with the GM and in particular Global Entrepreneurship Week since day one. So we are US-based development organization, and our mission is to help Russian entrepreneurial ecosystem to grow, to develop, and we do it through the number of different programs for entrepreneurs of different levels. For the ones who just have an idea and want to develop it, for the businesses that are growing, we have a very So we have a very good program Scale Up for the businesses that are growing. Last year, actually, during the GIC, there were a lot of sessions discussing Scale Up and why we need more now Scale Up companies and actually startups. And we also are part of G20 Young Entrepreneurs Alliance, and there will be a summit in May in Japan. In Fukuoka. We also have Dynamic Entrepreneurship Classroom. This program actually was introduced by Kaufman about 10 years ago, and it's still very up to date because it's aimed at professors who teach entrepreneurship in universities and what methodology and what practices they use to do so. So it's very up to date because we need more entrepreneurship programs in the universities. We also do Startup Huddle, and there will be a few, I think, sessions discussing Huddle later today. And we work in 15 cities right now, so all across Russia. We are going this year to Vladivostok, which is situated over here. So we cover pretty all the land. And we work with regions as well, with more regions, about 57 on GW. So for GW we cover much more. And I'll be happy, of course, to tell, I just don't want to spend a lot of time on speaking about our company, but I'll be happy to tell you more after this session. So before we start speaking about unicorns, do you know any founders of unicorns, maybe unicorn companies? I guess you might know. You might know because you are from Beijing, right? And China has been now. Well, we will talk about it later, but China recently produced a lot of unicorns. So, what do you know about unicorns as related to the animal? What does it mean? What is it associated with? So, unicorn, it's a legendary creature that has been described since antiquity, and it's described as a beast with a single large pointed horn projecting from its forehead. It is a symbol of fantasy and reality. So, unicorn started to be used in the business world as a symbol of something very rare. Because if you look into back to 2013, when the venture capitalist coined the term, there were just 39 unicorns, but now there are much more, and I'll show you in the second slide. So now, under unicorn in the business sector, we understand a company that's valued over $1 billion. There are also two more terms for unicorns: decacorn, that describes companies that are valued more than $10 billion, and hectacorns, a company valued over $100 billion. And there are a few companies that are very close for being hackathons. So I just want to mention here quickly two other funny terms. It's gazelle, related to animals in business. So it's gazelle companies, the companies that are growing quickly, meaning 20% per year in 4 years in a row. So basically they double in 4 years in their capitalization. And also there is a term in dancing elephants which describes huge corporations that are trying to change, trying to adapt new technologies, but because they are huge, they are described as animals who want to dance, because for corporations it's difficult to change. So these two words are quite used to the business literature. So speaking about the numbers and the rarity, so in 2014 when the term emerged, there were just 39 unicorns, valued altogether just at $100 billion. And this time it's probably this time it was not expected that the number would be growing that much in the rest of the years. But already in 2018, 5 years later, there are actually in 2019, sorry, because I just looked for the latest statistic. So for the number that I looked yesterday, it was 342 unicorns. For example, I checked the number 3 weeks ago, and it was 320 something. So the number is just growing like mushrooms after the rain. And they are valued altogether at $1.3 trillion, and the total amount of capital raised is about actually more, because the number is about $300 billion, which is absolutely huge money. So, and in 2018 solely, about 112 new companies and unicorns joined the Unicorn Club, which is 58% increase from last year, which signifies that the number is really growing like crazy. So now again the question for you, what do you think are the most widespread sectors for unicorns? So in what sectors usually unicorns emerge? Yeah, one of them, fintech. One of them is not like top 3, but yes, and that's generally growing. Where? You mean depending in the world? Yeah, so it's not related to any countries in the world, but yes, you are right. The education sector has been, the amount of startups has been growing very significantly in latest years, and it's one of the most fast-growing sectors. So speaking about the sectors of unicorns, the biggest sector is e-commerce and marketplace. So basically it's different platforms that provide a platform-based business model where different other businesses can enter and offer their services, and of course they're most well known. The representative of the group, which we all know, is Airbnb. So all of them are more or less same kind of as Airbnb service. They're also a very big sector, of course, is internet software and different services. So Spotify here is quite a well-known company. Zoom, Quora, a big platform where you can ask questions and get replies. GitHub and others. Cybersecurity has been growing lately, and I think cybersecurity will be growing very significantly because we see more and more different viruses appear and cyber attacks, and now when we actually speak about confrontation of countries in a military way, we also mean cybersecurity attacks, because data is now in the world, and by having different data, you can really damage the country that you want to damage, different systems. So it will be very much big growing sector. Fintech, of course, is on top. There are few social services, mostly from US, though some Chinese are there too. Big data, different on-demand services. I saw there should be facility we work, so one of the biggest unicorns we work related to facility services. Can't find it here, but it's somewhere. On demand, like Uber, Lyft. Yeah, in real estate, yeah, thank you. Real estate, and some other sectors. And this is, by the way, this graph is from CB Insight, so it's a very nice information platform, CB Insight, where they have very good statistics for all venture-related things. So, yeah, it's written over here. So, for more details, I recommend you to check on their website. So, and what about the countries? So, we discussed the big sectors, and what do you think are the top countries that produce unicorns nowadays? US, yes, or US.
Russia.
No, unfortunately, it's a controversial thing about whether it's about the value of unicorns, what value they bring to the economy, to the ecosystem. So Russia is not, but China. So actually, here are the four biggest producers of unicorns across the world. It's US with half of the market. It's China with 26%, and China has been growing the amount generally of startups, innovations, unicorns, so it's 26% now. It's the UK with 6% because London will talk about it a bit later. London is a big one of the top, maybe the top actually, innovation and entrepreneurship hubs in Europe. So London, and it's a global hub. So people go to London when they really want to do something scalable. And India. And speaking about, and generally speaking about these four countries, one of the reasons why they are in the top is because of language, first of all. Because US and UK, the language is English, so with English they can penetrate more users. So for them, they don't need to learn another language to be able to produce something. So it's natural. And for China, China itself has, of course, a big market. So for Chinese, it's also not a problem to reach a lot of customers. And the Indian market is also growing, so it's about, the population number is about same as in China. So India has also a big potential for producing companies that can quickly scale. And speaking about China here very quickly, I want to mention that recently, in last I think 2 years, China has been on top in terms of the number of produced patents. And the Chinese companies, I think Samsung is leading the rank, surpassed Apple and Google in patent production. So China recently, last 2-3 years, has really become a very innovative country, which not just produces but also consumes innovation, which is important. So by consuming, I mean here that companies and people use the apps, the different services that appear, and in terms of companies, they also buy them. So there is a market for it, because, for example, in Russia, one of our cultural probably things that is also connected to the economy and not fast-growing economy these days. We have some wonderful ideas, startups, innovations, but we do not really use them, we do not buy them, we do not try them, and that's why there is not much market for it. So this is important to have the market for innovation. So what fueled unicorns? I started talking about this already. The first factor that fueled the rapid development of the unicorns, of course, is new tools, new technologies versus old industries. So with the appearance of smartphones, chip centers, cloud computing, AI, blockchain, and the old industries at the same time, which need some changes, which need some renovation. It's the whole market of opportunities open for many companies, and they used and the startups used the opportunity to provide something new for the old industries, and this was one of the fuels for the unicorns development. The next one is the rise of super platforms. Yesterday, the Skype co-founder mentioned this trend, so it's zero innovation. So by building very cheap solutions, usually IT based, is a famous venture capitalist, Mark Andreessen, I think, said, software eats the world, so software is almost everywhere. It's cheap to produce new products, but at the same time, with such platforms as Apple, as Android, you can easily offer your product and it can reach big markets. So through Apple platform, you can find a lot of different services, and from the service side, from the startup side, through the platforms, we can reach at the same time a lot of customers. So the platform, the marketplace thing affected this trend too. The next thing is connectivity. So by now there are about 7 billion cell phones in the world. So in Africa, people sometimes do not have, for example, basic things like water, like food, but they have cell phones. So they are connected to the virtual world, and this is a big market. And one of the features of unicorns is not their big revenues or big profits, but the ability to reach a lot of customers. So it's important to have big markets, and with cell phone penetration, there are these markets now. So it's another fuel for scalable companies to develop. Another actually very, very important reason is, of course, excessive venture capital. So as we saw, the number one country for unicorns is the United States, because the United States has the most developed venture capital market. And if you look also for venture capital funds that invest in unicorns, we will see that the top funds will be from the US, like Sequoia, like SoftBank, Google Ventures, and other companies. So it's important to have a lot of venture risky capital in the market to fuel unicorns further. It's also, speaking about the venture capital, by the way, it's also important to mention that now, since 2015, more corporations started to open corporate venture funds, and by opening corporate venture funds and investing in different startups, in 70%, maybe more of the cases, they actually lose money, but at the same time, for them, it's important way to learn about new technologies, to learn about new markets, to interact with entrepreneurs and innovators, to have some breakthrough ideas, and so it's become a source of new developments for the corporate. So in the past it was just R&D centers where researchers were finding new ways to develop corporations further, to find some new solutions. But now more and more companies see entrepreneurs as such source of new ideas and new services for the companies. So companies started to invest a lot in startups to learn about this. And in 2015 also it was a year where a lot of Chinese corporations started to invest very, very actively in startups in Europe and the US. Now they invest a lot in China, because in China there are a lot of startups and unicorns, as we see. So for them it was very also important thing to learn about the market. Yes, and actually this is the last point, the rise of China. So in China now it's probably the second, maybe the third actually, the third biggest market of venture capital. The second would be Europe, Europe venture funds combined, but then it goes for China. So another thing why Chinese, I think, invested that much in new technologies because China was very, very eager to turn into innovative super country from copying, because some years ago we tended to associate China with copying different products, but now I think we can say that China is a big innovator and they're producing wonderful things. So recently, one of the recent technologies that I came across is a flying drone that is able to so it's used for logistics, so which enables to transport different products, and I think it's already launched. And also there is a very interesting app also introduced by China that enables to, so it's AI based app, which enables to understand the reason why little babies are crying. So for a lot of parents, even they are parents, for them it's very difficult before their child starts to speak to understand why little kid is crying. So it's up to 2 years old. So in China they developed an app that can verify why a little baby, actually not kid baby, is crying. Is it his stomach, or it's just his comprise, or it's a noise on the background and something else. So it's very, very innovative thing actually. What time is it start? 10:30. So generalizing the strategy and the basis of unicorns, so all of them, they rely on three main things. So they expand at a very high rate. So they have to grow in 1-2 years very, very rapidly. So if the company is not growing in 1 or 2 years rapidly, it's probably not considered a unicorn, at least from the point of investors. So investors usually identify whether the company will be growing, will be developing further on or not. If it's a unicorn, by looking at how it's growing in the first 2 years. Unicorns usually attract very large funding routes. So I think lately Uber, it was Uber's I think fourth or fifth round, and it attracted about if I'm not mistaken $5 billion. So just for one round of investment. So it's huge money, and Uber doesn't have any revenue. So Uber just spends per year $1 billion of course. So it's another big question about unicorns, what they're worth actually, really what they're worth. And the third thing, which I already mentioned, is price cutting. So it's zero innovation. It's important to have at the basis of such companies very, very low cost, or basically zero cost at the beginning. So some of the business models based that you do not pay for the basic services that you use, but you start to pay when you upgrade your levels of using the service. So I think it's called freemium. The business model is called freemium. And there is some of the famous unicorns listed above, like Uber, Airbnb, Netflix is a very big story now, platform for movies, for films, for series, WeWork, which is a co-working centers all over the world, Didi, Chinese unicorn, ByteDance, which is evaluated, the most evaluated company nowadays. So unicorns, when we speak about unicorns, another term comes to mind, which is exponential organization. I don't want to stop a lot on this. This term was introduced by Salim Ismail, Singularity University professor and famous entrepreneur. So he has a very good book that is named the same, Exponential Organization. And in this book he explains that recently, because of the technology, all processes are based, so all processes develop exponentially, which means like this. So the power of technology, it's more or double each year, so it's 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, etc., which makes the growth like this. So very linear and then vertical. Vice versa, before the IT technologies and software was introduced that widely, the growth of all the companies were like this. I didn't have the graph here, sorry, but it was linear, so it was very, very step by step. And this changes a lot. This changes how we build companies, how we build cultures and companies, and also how fast companies grow. So all the unicorns, of course, grow exponentially. That's why while describing and talking about exponential organizations, he rely a lot on unicorns. And the impact of any exponential organization should be 10x larger than the impact of the average company, because the company uses new technologies and basic services on new business models. So there are the list of some companies that are exponential by in different sectors of the company. So for example, Airbnb has more than 90 listings per employee. Local Motors have 1,000. It's cheaper to produce a new car model than on average our company in the automotive sector. Creative has a 10x faster product development than an average company, so it's really fast in developing products, and etc., etc., etc. So you have to see the numbers here. On this slide, you can see the list of the top most valued unicorns. So, as I said, nowadays the first one is ByteDance from China, which is valued at $75 billion. And we just joined the Unicorn Club in 2017, so in 2 years, less than 2 years, it was able to grow really significantly. Uber has the second place, valued by $72 billion. This is another big juicy company with 56 billion valuation. WeWork, Jewel Labs, Airbnb, Stripe, etc. So the majority, as you can see, coming from the United States. There is one from Singapore, 2 from China, but there are a lot of much more unicorns further on that are coming from China and from India, as we saw. And speaking about the industry, there is fintech, gaming, which is also, by the way, growing very significantly. WeWork from facilities, on-demand services, and ByteDance, digital media, and AI. And looking at the investors as well, you can see that in many companies, here are the same investors' names like Sequoia, SoftBank Group, Tencent, which started the big investment, same in China, whereas Andres and Horowitz, which is very famous venture fund from the United States, and others. So here again some venture companies that I just mentioned, some of them that invest a lot in unicorns. So as I said, it's a little bit closed club, so not a lot of funds can allow themselves and provide smart money for investing in unicorns. So one of the first that started was Sequoia, and it's actually one of the first venture funds, or maybe the first, the father of the funds that emerged in the United States. DST Global, which has a big investor from Russia, Yuri Milner. So he invests a lot by himself and through the DST Global Fund. And Andreas Horowitz, which is also a very famous fund from the United States. CD Angel, I think, also from the United States, and some others. And this is a number of the unicorns that they have in their portfolio. Let's see. So we'll skip this for a while. So what can be wrong with unicorns? On the other hand, speaking about the positive things about having a unicorn in your ecosystem, it can signify that you have a good venture capital. So for other startups, speaking about, because one of the ideas and wishes of all ecosystems is to attract talents, to attract promising startups in the ecosystem in the city. So having unicorns can be a good sign that you have venture capital, that you have a lot of money that can be potentially invested in your startup. It also can signify that you have strategic investors and further exits, which is also good because without having exit or selling your company, selling your startup to a big company, some entrepreneurs don't see a reason to start a company because usually it makes sense to IPO, to sell to a big corporation, and in very rare cases to continue like as Kaspersky Lab. So Kaspersky Lab is a still privately owned company, and he doesn't want to talk about any possible acquisition or merging or selling this company. And Kaspersky is developing very well. So what can be wrong with unicorns? So first of all, it's said that unicorns are backed with the artificial life force of VC dollars. So there's too much money invested in unicorns, and they're not profitable. And it looks like a potential bubble that can burst, like it happened in the beginning of 2000. The unicorns have a misguided plans for domination, meaning that a lot of founders of unicorns think about their products and about their companies as a very transformative, very impactful to the market. But telling the truth, we don't know that much companies, maybe except Netflix, Uber, Airbnb, and maybe 20 others out of 346 that are really, really transformative and really changing something. So a lot of thoughts about being powerful and dominating do not have enough ground. And very briefly, what I think are the leading ecosystems for unicorns, where these companies, we talked about the countries, but for the cities, what are these ecosystems where you can find such developing companies? Well, so it's of course Silicon Valley, always on top. And it's New York. This is top 20. This is London, Beijing. The methodology is based on Startup Genome. So actually yesterday they presented their new report. This is a report from 2018. So I didn't have a look yet in a new report, but in 2018 these were the leading ecosystems for startups and for unicorns as well. So Boston, Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv actually is a very famous spot also for going global. It's not listed as a top country in the unicorn report, but it's very powerful ecosystem where usually founders aim from day one and produce something global. Berlin has been developing very rapidly in last 5 years, so now a lot of talent together in Berlin. Shanghai is the first time listed in the report, also very already an 8th position because of all this investment in startups and the number of unicorns that they have. Singapore, Paris, and some ecosystems from Europe, Vancouver and Toronto from Canada. And an interesting case actually about Stockholm. Stockholm is the first time mentioned in the ranking because of being well connected to other ecosystems in the world. So one of the interesting things, I think it's my next slide. So these are the performance indicators that were used to build this report, and I highlighted in green 3 top things that signify that your ecosystems have more chances to be the strong one, especially for producing unicorns. So speaking about Stockholm, one of the really strong points of this ecosystem is that it is very good internationally connected to other ecosystems, and the founders have a global mindset. So by being connected to other ecosystems means that founders keep track and keep very close, trying to keep very close ties to other founders in different ecosystems and exchange information and data with each other to stay ahead and to stay always on top of the emerging trends, which helps to develop disruptive and progressive products. And founders' mindset is also important in building a unicorn, because as more globally founders think, that the better chances that they will build global companies. So, for example, the most global mindset that founders have probably can be found in Silicon Valley, in Tel Aviv, in London, in a way in China, but for the Chinese market mostly. And of course, as we said, financing is also very important. So if you don't have a lot of venture capital, if it's if people don't want to risk, probably it would be difficult for unicorns to develop further. Speaking very quickly about Moscow, about our strong points of our ecosystem, we were in the ranking in 2015 and 2014, ranked quite high in the 13th and 14th place, but then we fell off the ranking in 2016, and that was related to some geopolitical problems. It also was related to the fact that our economy has not been growing significantly last years. It's said that we grow 1.6%, but we don't really feel it. And of course, it's not the enough growth rate for pushing businesses to develop. For example, India growing at 7%, and even for India, it's not that enough to push their business activity further on. So we have, surprisingly, we have, because I have not, before that, I did not think a lot about this. We have some visa barriers, which apparently put some constraints for other entrepreneurs and talents to come to our ecosystem. And we still do not have very well developed mature venture capital market. And importantly, we don't have early stage early stage funding, which means that it's very difficult to attract capital when you just begin your businesses, which is a big issue, because especially for unicorns, you have to have a lot of funding to develop. But however, we have our own talent, which is usually a more engineering talent. We have interest and the high output of startups, meaning a lot of people actually willing to try to build business, to build a startup, so they want to risk. And this has improved through the latest years. People become, as entrepreneurs, they become more risky. And we developed also very good support system for startups, meaning different accelerators, incubators, mentoring programs. So there are a lot of people who are willing to help entrepreneurs to develop further. That is it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. If not, do you have any questions? Mm-hmm.
You talked about growth employees on your last previous slide.
Here?
Yeah, what do you mean experience growth employees?
This?
No, right about talent. Yes, there you go.
Experience growth employees.
Yes.
This one. So that is related to people who can who have necessary skill set to develop businesses. Because in Russia, for example, we back in times, still in place now, we have more engineering mindset of people. So people are very good in developing new technologies, new solutions, but they were not very good at marketing them in business development. So speaking about this index, it means having people that can develop businesses, that can market them and can bring them to the market. So, and this index for us improved during the last year. So these are people who can push their business further. And this is, you can also find this in Startup Genome Report with other 20 and even more integrated lately, about 40 different ecosystems. You can find those details there. So, with no more questions, then thank you very much for the attention. I'm here for a bit more to talk, and if you want to know about the company or if you have any other questions, and I wish everyone a very productive day today. Thank you.
Yes. My name is Tim Kroll. I'll be moderating the panel today. I'll let them give short introductory backgrounds about themselves. By way of my background, I spent 10 years in technology. I spent 10 years as a venture capitalist, and I've spent 10 years working with Rob Webker and Julie on entrepreneurship and metrics and outcomes for economic development. So to start this off, Julie, can you give us 1 or 2 minute career highlights through IBM but before OIE?
Before OIE, okay. So my name is Julie Lenzer. I am a recovering entrepreneur. So I built and sold a software company that did manufacturing, data collection, and analytics. I started my career at IBM. I have a degree in computer science, wrote a book, have had a really interesting career that I guess he doesn't want me to talk about the really cool stuff until later.
We'll get there.
Okay, so.
Tell us something we wouldn't know about you by looking you up on the internet.
Oh my gosh, that's pretty hard. Everything's on the internet now, isn't it? I have 2 daughters. That maybe isn't something that's so public. Both just graduated from college.
Okay, that works.
So I'm Rob Webster. I'm a research professor at the University of Colorado in the United States. Thank you. And previous to my academic background, I spent about 20 years working on software industry, specifically in the industry, and sort of doing plumbing. So all of sort of the first generation internet infrastructure development parts and systems and things. Transitioned to academia in 2006. Took on a position at the University of Utah in 2009. I teach entrepreneurship at the University of Utah. And I guess something that people wouldn't know about me is Ken, way back in the day when I graduated from college and I was finishing a job as a bicycle delivery package person. Ken was my first boss.
We'll get into that. I wasn't exactly his boss. Julie, can you tell us about what OIE is, and tell us about what your intuition was about entrepreneurship going into OIE?
So I was appointed to the director of the Office of Innovation and Entrepreneurship under the Obama administration. So I was privileged to be able to give grants. We gave out about 40 million US to ecosystems around the country. And it was to help the ecosystems to help the entrepreneurs. So to fund what it is I imagine most of you do every day. And I'm not sure exactly which intuition about entrepreneurship. I have lots of them.
What did you think about entrepreneurship? And more importantly, what were you wrong about? What did you learn while you were there that surprised you to you?
So I would say I don't. My intuition about entrepreneurship is that you cannot really teach someone to be an entrepreneur. That I've spent a lot of time with entrepreneur support organizations, and that's who we funded. And the real role, you can't create an entrepreneur. There are several things that you can do to help them, or you can help people to discover that they're entrepreneurs. You can help them unlock that within themselves. You can help teach them some of the things that you might not know, like how to, read a balance sheet, how to do your financials, what principles of marketing are. But there's something inherent about you can't teach someone persistence. It's hard to help people learn how to take risks. You can encourage them, you can support them, you can connect them with resources, But oftentimes, an entrepreneur has to find that within themselves to do it. If somebody doesn't have it within themselves, there's probably nothing that you can do to bring that out. And whether or not we can debate whether or not you feel that's true, but I've yet to see I've seen a lot of people who you look at them and say, I'm not sure you're an entrepreneur, you might be, but I don't see it, and they could bring it, and it's inside of them and you just didn't see it. But then there's also people that you see it very clearly, that they have that drive, that persistence, that risk, that willingness to take a risk. So I'm sure we'll talk more about that.
Rob, how about you? What was your intuition before getting your PhD in entrepreneurship, and what were you wrong about?
One of the privileges about being an academic is you get to be wrong like a lot and all the time. In fact, like most of your job is trying to run a series of failed experiments around questions like you're asking entrepreneurs to be educated and these sorts of things, and discovering the likelihood that they're wrong. That's like back what the scholars get to do is they get paid to like fail a lot and take these sort of more risks. So, you know, most of my first batch of research was a set of sort of failed experiments that highlighted intuition that I had about the role of universities and organizations that take as a matter of course a set of assumptions about entrepreneurship. And by the way, again, for those who showed up, I'm an insider. I teach entrepreneurship for a living. That's like what I sort of paid to do behind my research. So I'm like part of the sort of bite that man occasionally is this like you know, the intuitions are first, you know what entrepreneurship is, right? The next one being more entrepreneurship is a good thing, like always and on and on. So we want to just promote it because it's good, because entrepreneurship. And that it can be taught, as you're suggesting, right? Some people think that it can or can't. We sort of take as an order of an article of faith that it can be taught. And then at the university side, we take as an article of faith that the university is the place that ought to teach it. And that it can be taught in a classroom or some setting like that, some sort of fictive setting at the university, and that we can do so within the time constraints of, in my case, a semester, a block of time. Sure. All really puzzling assumptions when you just stop for a minute and ask, like, what do we actually know about this? Are these things actually true? And sort of in aggregate, I'm a lot more suspicious than I used to be about the role of universities in entrepreneurship education specifically. Now, for those of you about to throw something at me, I'm not suggesting that universities should be involved in entrepreneurship. Part of what you get to do as a professor is question sort of this movement. But I think there is an important role somewhere, something to help support entrepreneurs. It's just not entirely clear to me that we have it figured out at the university level. Sorry, this is a bit long.
I would just like to add to that. In my experience, oftentimes people who come out with an MBA, a Master's of Business Administration, are some of the worst entrepreneurs, only because they have this formula of how it's supposed to work. And I don't know about you, Rob, but nothing in my company worked the way it was supposed to work. I mean, there were certain things, but I had to figure it out, and by and large, and it wasn't any set path. And so there's many different ways. You could talk to two entrepreneurs and they did exactly the same thing, maybe in different markets and at different times, and they had completely different results. And so how do you teach that when there's no one right way to do it?
So at this point I'm supposed to sort of promote my own work or use this as an opportunity to cite my own research, which I'm now not going to do. I'm going to actually direct your attention to some research I think is really interesting that's not mine, which most of the research isn't mine. One's a piece by Ron Chatterjee where he does this really interesting experiment, and one of his findings is that individuals in these programs that have received previous entrepreneurship training do worse on measures than others, which is sort of not what we hoped we would find. It's really good, his work is really good, it's tight, it's science, but it didn't sort of generate the hopeful outcome. And then there's a large batch of work sort of summarized by Dr. Thomas Paris, who concludes when you look at the corpus of research on entrepreneurship education, the truth in effect the thing that we're trying to do, whatever sort of measure of peak you want, is mixed or marginal, and that's a polite academic way of saying it's a disaster. That's an academic's way of saying we have no idea what we're doing. So your notions about the shadow and the wind, these are things that are completely reasonable to learn, and the more really good scholarship that we produce, the more we realize, the less we actually know about how this works. I would say that, speaking as an academic, that's what I sort of conclude from my sort of broad reading of literature.
So we're still talking about some of the background material behind what is a unicorn and what does it cost to generate one. Should we generate one? Are there other organizations that you think are admirable that are really working in this space? I mean, you work both in the corporate world and you work in the government space. Anyone who's worked you particularly admire, anyone who you think does a good job?
From an education perspective or just any perspective? No, I mean, I think there's some really strong ecosystems out there, and I think that that's the point, is that it takes a village to help support an entrepreneur. As a university, so I've only been in the university for 2 years now. As an entrepreneur, I didn't think I would last that long, honestly. I thought I would be gone by now, because it's a very frustrating environment for somebody who is an entrepreneur. But that's exactly why governments and academia need entrepreneurs. They need us because we are persistent, we're stubborn, we like to break through barriers. But I will say that the best ecosystems around the world are those that have not just the entrepreneurs kind of at the lead, as you've heard. You have to have entrepreneurs that are leading the ecosystem. You have to bring the private sector in, and it is helpful to have the government involved as well to some extent, because the problem that we're dealing with in helping entrepreneurs is that we're helping a constituency who cannot necessarily afford to pay market rates for our services. And so there has to be some support for that, either through foundations, through the government, but there's a lot of great things, and where the best ecosystems are where all of these resources are connected and working together on behalf of the entrepreneur.
You said we're connected and working on behalf of the entrepreneur. So part of that is that code also for either low or no cost.
Yeah, by working on behalf of the entrepreneur, it's two things actually. So it's at a very low cost. I think oftentimes if entrepreneurs and anyone in general receives something for free, they don't value it. So I think that there's a reasonableness test of there has to be some skin in the game from the other side. So it's a cost thing, but then it's also, as I say, working on behalf of the entrepreneur. I've worked in economic development. I've worked in the government. You can have your objectives for why you support this, but you also can't be too stringent about that, because you have to be working not for your own benefit, but for the benefit of the broader community. So that's what I mean, working on behalf of the entrepreneur. Because an entrepreneur has to do what they have to do to build their business, and it might be sometimes, I see especially when it's an economic development play, and in the US, we have oftentimes very siloed economic development regions, and I help this entrepreneur, but they have to move over here because this is where the workforce is. I can't put handcuffs on them to keep them from moving where they need to go to get the resources, because I can strangle their business. And so it could be very difficult when you start to involve different objectives other than helping the entrepreneur be successful.
I think it's really insightful. One of the things that I've really in the past, I think we attempt to sort of solve some of those problems at the country level, the same sort of problems you're describing at the state and regional level.
So we represent different organizations. I had been primarily an investor. Do we have any other investors in the room? Yes? Rob is an academic, among other things. Do we have academics in the room?
Sorry.
Okay. Julie has worked in government capacity. Do we have government officials in the room? Yes? Okay. We've all worked in corporate settings. How many work in a corporate setting?
Sorry again.
Well, Harry works for a foundation, so actually that's another entity which does a lot of good on entrepreneurship and startup research. Julie's also worked in the nonprofit space. How many of you work for a nonprofit? Okay. How many of you work for another organization that I didn't mention? Okay, would you be kind enough to tell us what it is?
Hi everyone, so I work for a startup. I'm a co-founder in a makerspace.
Nice. Right. Where's the makerspace located?
Oman. It's a 1 hour, 30 minutes flight from Bahrain.
Gotcha. So talk to me about your makerspace. I'm going to come visit.
All right, so we have entrepreneurs. Anyone else? Fantastic. Rob, well, does anyone know in the audience what a unicorn is? Yes? Would anyone like to tell us what a unicorn is?
$1 billion valuation. Here we go.
Company with $1 billion valuation.
And why is that, or a mythical creature? Why is that a noteworthy concept? I mean, who thinks about such things, and why is that relevant? Rob, you want to talk about that?
Not really.
Then we'll get someone else. Does anyone else like to talk about this? Okay.
I mean, it's a signal of success, but it's largely made up by investors, so it's a fake number.
Yes. Having been an investor or being a recovering investor, we had several fake numbers. Rob, tell us about your article, The Cost of Unicorns.
Now you can talk about it.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about. Okay, so in order, because again, professors are hideously in danger of monologuing, so I've solved that by summarizing what the article that we're describing is about, which is it's a piece called The Cost of Unicorns, and it explores my experiences only in the U.S. context of the popularity of entrepreneurship programs in U.S. universities. So right now, entrepreneurship is having a moment in the United States. It's so hot right now, and we are investing significant amounts of money at the university level on programs, contests, pitch deck things, buildings, and all manner of other apparatus that we assert are going to help entrepreneurs be successful. So again, we don't quite maybe know what successful is for a moment, and we aren't entirely clear what entrepreneurship is, but we definitely know we have money and we want to build some buildings and figure out how to help people do some stuff. And the article explores some of the potential issues that are intentional outcomes, i.e., how would we know if that massive investment is working? First question. Second question is, even if it is working, what is the input, right? If it takes me $1.2 billion to generate one unicorn, we have a problem with cost per outcome. This is the cost per unicorn argument. So we need to think carefully about the total burden to cost associated with this imaginary development of this mythical startup that may or may not be important to my region. And then there's these, that's the intentional outcomes. Like, do they work? And if they did, is this valuable? And then there's, I also explore the unintended consequences of this, which are, when you have these series of programs, again, the underlying assumption, which is an assertion, which is that universities are the right place to do this, and that we as academics know how to teach entrepreneurship. Now, to be 100% clear, I'm an academic, I teach entrepreneurship for a living. It's not entirely clear to me that we know how to do this. I'm apparently pretty good at it, according to like both teacher ratings and the fact that my university is highly ranked in some sort of mythical ranking for entrepreneurship. So presumably I have something to say about like entrepreneurship education. And even I am quite skeptical that this stuff is working. And I'm also concerned about a particular type of unintended outcome. And I just have one example, which is these activities could, although well-meaning, unintentionally produce activities that are either irrelevant or counterproductive to generating new startups. And they also, in my experience, as I write in the article, they reinforce odd or negative or potentially dangerous intuitions about how one builds companies that then I, as an instructor, have to unlock. So that's what sort of the article works through, questioning how we would measure if this stuff is working. And then even if it were wildly successful, whether there's a set of unintended consequences that we're not considering that make universities a place that we think more carefully about what we're actually trying to do. Sorry to monologue. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I have several thoughts because you were talking about unintended consequences and kind of there's this, in the US, there's this fantasy, I will say, much like a unicorn, right? That I'm going to go on Shark Tank and I'm going to get, investment for my company. But just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Shark
For
Tank,
example.
Shark Tank is a television program, and if you've never seen it, congratulations to you.
I will not watch it. It's a bunch of very arrogant investors who are, these people come up with their dreams and their hard work and blood, sweat, and tears, and these people basically, are very oftentimes rude to them, not always. Sometimes they're like, oh, this is great, I want to invest. They do, in my opinion, often take advantage of these entrepreneurs by undervaluing their businesses. But they give this, because of its popularity in the U.S., and I think it has been syndicated quite a bit outside the U.S. in different forms, it gives this picture of, to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to get investment. And that is categorically not true. To be a successful entrepreneur, you have to build something that somebody will pay you money to fix a problem, to solve. So I built a company. I did not get any investment. I had a customer, Procter & Gamble, who funded my development of my software. But during the time, my company was being developed during 2000, which in the U.S. was a very big, we call it the .com bomb, where all these internet companies who did nothing but have a really good, like petfood.com, they raised millions of dollars and had nothing to show for it. And I thought I was doing it wrong because I wasn't raising money. And this is an example of that bad perception, because here I am, I have a customer, I have employees, I'm building value and delivering solutions to my client, and I'm feeling like I'm not good enough, that I don't have the right kind of company because of the way that we promote these things. So I'll stop.
TV show.
I don't want to pile on to intuitions, but I think these are the sorts of things that when we in the classroom, in my classroom, if you're generating any sort of artifact, I'll give a specific example, but then of course this group can generalize. It would be like, you have a class that has as its final outcome source some sort of pitch deck. And the pitch deck is one, and then you take this financing pitch deck and you stand in front of a number of people, and a number of people judge this thing and then give you a grade. The entire apparatus, the danger of it, I know as an investor and someone who's raised money that's entirely fictive. One neither feeds off of the artifact, nor does the process of capital raising look at all like the presentations that you give in the classroom. Now we know this. Now it could be the case that doing that in the classroom has some alternative educational aim that we might be shooting for. But the challenge is most of my students are not in on that journey. Most of the participants that I have in my classroom then walk out of the classroom assuming a set of notions about how one goes about building a company and how one goes about building capital, that unless both the students, participants in the course, and the instructor are all in on the joke, this is a giant protected village, we know clearly this is not how it works, this is an artifact of an attempt to teach some important educational outcome that we know that we create a made-up snow globe. Unless we do that, which most people don't, because most entrepreneurship instructors don't ever raise money, so they actually don't know any better. So these sorts of intuitions that we have, I'm very sympathetic to them, even as an educator. Right? It's such a, you tell me, I don't think we know how to educate entrepreneurs, and I think what we do is bad, and I can't do that.
Well, and I actually taught at a graduate level entrepreneurship for two semesters, so for about a year, and I realized that I didn't want to give a grade to someone's hard work, because there have been ideas that I've looked at and said, I think that's stupid, and they've gone on to make a lot of money. So what do I know? Because it just is one of these things. So what I did when I taught my classes, and I think this is what you do as well, I brought in other people who have raised, built companies as examples, and specifically brought people in who had completely different experiences, where I wanted one speaker that said, I did this and it did not work. And then the next speaker said, I did that exact same thing and it worked. Because that is the reality, is that you and I could do the exact same thing, same market, same different timing or whatever, and have completely different results.
I'm sure you have other questions you'd like to ask.
No, I was just going to comment for those.
Keep chatting.
The FedEx. My understanding is the FedEx business plan was developed at Harvard. It was Wharton or Penn. So for those of you who know FedEx in the United States, that business plan got a D, right? The professor, of course, said that's a stupid idea.
I didn't want to do
You're never
that.
going to deliver packages door to door with trucks like that could and fly them around in airplanes. That could never happen.
One small thing to add to this was the work that you do at Plateau with peer cohort coaching. So think about batches of 30 to 50 entrepreneurs at a time, all getting together and working together in these batches and having to support them. One of the things that I know that you did and your colleagues have done is with this sort of little spreadsheet, and people come in and they have these ideas, and then you, as an investor, and your friends or sophisticated operators are sort of looking at them and going like, that's never going to work, that might work. The quality of that entrepreneur is good. So thinking ex ante, like in the beginning, what you think is going to happen, and then ex post, like what actually happens, what happens after the intervention is over, and then what happens 5 years from now. And I think one of the things that you concluded from that experience is similar to yours, which is like, you guys, you should be good at figuring this out. You as an investor, by the way, or a capital markets actor, you are designed, you have evolved as a species to be able to determine this. This is what venture...
We collectively?
Yeah, the capital market actors, venture capitalists are designed to try to solve that problem. And despite trying to solve that problem, you guys were no better than random. So like this notion, and I think that's actually really telling. You might want to talk a little bit more about your experience.
Well, one thing worth mentioning is that only something like 1 in 1,000 businesses that are looking for venture capital in the United States get funded with venture capital in the United States. So I think my highest purpose, especially working with your students, is to say, if you're out looking for money, we would never fund your business. The only companies that I invest in are companies that are too busy working on their businesses to go out looking for money to have a pitch deck and be entered in business competitions and similar types of things. You've actually opened up an intro for me to tell a few stories on you, but before we do that, why don't I ask the audience what they have for questions on this material about unicorns and creating value and economic development. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to ask a question? Yes. And please tell us your name.
So my name is Beres Sata. I don't know technology accelerator. My question, my question was, what you mentioned earlier during there was one piece of research that you cited which showed that people who go through multi-leadership courses are less likely to succeed, and ones who don't something like that. Do you think that has something to do with the type of people that are attracted to entrepreneurship or business?
Repeat the question.
So the question here is, in terms of Ronnie's work around what do we observe education outcomes, is this because the people, is this a treatment effect or is this a selection effect? Is it the type of people that are getting attracted to these courses or naturally low quality? The answer, strictly speaking, is that I don't know. And that's sort of the great mystery of that paper is what's the mechanism why this is happening. So I can't say. But I guess whether how I speculate about it, so now I'm completely going off the reservation and speculating. My intuition is that at the university level, what happens in technology accelerators like yours, and assuming many of the entrepreneurs are located and they're working closely together. My suspicion is that is inhibited when you think you've got it all figured out. So individuals that have like gone through some other experience, formative experience, in this case, in education course at the university, and then come and interact, for example, and you're a different demographic, and let's pretend different businesses that you're doing fish cake marketing or doing home construction. And you want to provide me that feedback. I may be less willing to listen to coaching and be less interested because I don't doing well. What do you know? Like I've been through entrepreneurship so different. I've got entrepreneurship degree. And so I suspect, but I have no evidence, and this is something that I'd really like to explore, is what's driving this uncoachability for certain types of individuals that can do entrepreneurship? Is it treatment? Is it selection? I'm sorry, I wish I could.
I'm not academic.
You're going to tell them.
Yeah, I'm not academic, so I can speculate, and I have I can sleep at night with that. I have seen students that have gone through entrepreneurship programs be wildly successful. And I have seen students that have gone through entrepreneurship education, and like you discussed, think that they know it all and that they don't need help. I think that I don't think it's either way. So I think that people that get into an accelerator by default are looking for assistance. They're looking for help. And hopefully part of your criteria, if any of you are running accelerators, coachability should be one of your criteria of whether or not you let an entrepreneur in.
That's
Yeah.
totally research.
Oh, good. That's research supported. Woo! we have another question over here.
For those of you who are running accelerators and are interested, the stuff that I'm talking about is typically university entrepreneurship education. There's a rich academic literature on accelerators, which I'm happy to sort of share the highlights with you another time. So like for those of you like, I want to run an accelerator, I want to run one better, I don't want to break my entrepreneurship badly, or should I do this at all? We do now, because we have some time, this is roughly 2009, the last generation of accelerators started to be popular. We have enough data to make sort of causal inference about what works and what doesn't. And most recently, in the last couple of years, we've done some fantastic research to help to highlight that. And I'm happy to share that with you.
Although it's also worth mentioning that Rob has designed and run an anti-accelerator, so we might talk about that as well. Please tell us your name.
Thank you so much. My name is Edwin Zulu from Zambia, Africa. I just want to clarify on the misconception that when students are taken through entrepreneurship, then they automatically become entrepreneurs or business people. No. The point of entrepreneurship promotion across sectors is basically to help them to create a sense of responsibility. One, in entrepreneurship, entrepreneurs don't go into business to make money. It's about to solve problems. So if we have that mindset, we realize that to anything they do, they put value. And I think it's that mindset that we need. But also, some of them, when they are employed, they will become responsible managers. So those are key issues.
Yes.
But also then, entrepreneurship again should be a platform to promote innovation. And we need to create a culture. I did my first project when I was 12 years. I went to management when I was 24 years. And later, I've been in policy, entrepreneurship, business development for the last 25 years. I'm 50 now plus. So it's a principle, it's a mindset that we need to cultivate. This is very important. Thank you.
Rob, comment?
So you're fervently ready to comment.
Yeah.
So I have some also some questions.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. And if you heard, it is about a mindset, and I do believe, for me, it's about possibility thinking. It's about how can I solve problems. It's a problem-solving framework of you see a problem, then how can you individually affect and change that. But I will say that you say it's all about solving problems and not about making money. I've seen a lot of people that start nonprofits and they struggle because they don't think about how are you going to fund that. You can't make yourself more poor and help more people. So it's easier to change the world with money, just ask the Gates Foundation. Not saying that you should be in it to make money, but making money helps you to further your impact. So money is not a bad thing when it comes to solving problems. It actually helps you to accelerate the problem that you're trying to solve. So I just wanted to comment on that.
I actually shared some of the basic intuitions about thinking about entrepreneurship a bit like dangling some shiny keys, which is really tricky people who use the word entrepreneurship to learn some very life-related stuff that ends up irrespective of where you go, whether you fill out a firm or whether you want to impact the value. So I'm incredibly excited. And your notion of being able to
having your own internal definition of like what you think entrepreneurship is and what you think should count. What's interesting about that is the significant variance amongst institutions about what counts, right? So in my institution, where I'm running at the university level, why I'm sure my concern comes from, is like we have a giant banner in my students says we launched 400 companies this year. So what we're saying is like what's important is company launches. That's cool. But, however, if the goal of entrepreneurship is as you're describing, which is sort of different technologies, we have this interesting challenge associated with it. So I'm not, but again, I'm incredibly sympathetic.
I think that needs to be clarified. Well, the point is not saying you don't, the point is your focus and objective number one, if you want to be a dynamic entrepreneur, look at problem solving. And so basically you're always, when you see a problem, don't take it. You start thinking immediately, what is the best business solution? So we are not going to make this place or the world a better place with using social strategies to solve the problem. We need always to use business and business solution. Now, very important for academia, we need to focus on practical R&D, which is focused for business and product development and commercialization. Now, what that means is that academia should be linking with industry. Then, because what will happen is that when these students are innovating, or the projects they do, they should be community and business or community solving projects. So industry or community can adapt and finance. Then we would have addressed the challenge of R&D financing.
Totally agree.
Thank you.
Yes, we had a couple questions, and I think you had a follow-up.
Thank you. Following up to that, Matt Smith, Centre for Entrepreneurs UK, one of the initiatives we run is the equivalent of NBIA, National Network of Incubators. Our university incubators particularly are focused, grappling with how they pluck the students from entrepreneurship degrees and really grab hold of them and don't let them leave the university town, start businesses and create jobs elsewhere. And I know if you look at Paris, you have a couple of universities that have got incubation spaces stationed purely for their MSc entrepreneurship students and similar. What do you see as good practice in kind of managing that transition?
And how do you keep people around, and or should you try to keep people around? We have a mass exodus where Rob and I live in Salt Lake City from these great entrepreneurship initiatives out to Los Angeles and New York and Boston.
You're going to be much more qualified to answer this question. I think one interesting piece is the underlying base assumption that it's a swell idea to keep people around. Right? Again, as an academic, my job is to poke at that thing. This is an interesting dialogue. I'd actually love to have it with you. We live that on a day-to-day basis in Salt Lake City, where my most promising and engaged and capable students do one of two delightful things. One, they drop out, really awesome, I love it when they back. And usually when they drop out, they move someplace where there's, they're young, where they can, as a simple fact, example, you're 21 or 22 in Salt Lake City, it's very difficult to get seat financing because the old people that progress and grapple with the young person to do that. That's a Salt Lake City local problem. So my participants who are promising to structure their shoulders and say, sweet, and then move to San Francisco, and then move to Los Angeles and build their companies. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? It's unclear. My personal research takes a more global stance on that. Like I'm even more ecumenical, which is like if I were on the T road deciding I wanted to go make a big difference in the universe, I'd probably get a one-way ticket to Shanghai. So this is a conversation I'd love to have more with you, and you probably have one for all about it.
So our university over the last 5 years has made an attempt to get students to stay after they graduate. One of the things we realized is that our crime was high. We had no place for them, affordable place for them to live that they wanted to live. We didn't have cool coffee shops. So we started 5 years ago remaking into a college town because students came to our college in spite of the town, not because of it. So we've made a lot of progress about that. So that's when I was hired 2 years ago, is to help populate the community with like-minded individuals. We got the very first co-working, WeWork is a very large co-working space. We got the first WeWork on a college campus, came to our campus, and just opened up last December. So we have that there for the students. We had a big celebration last week on innovation, and we did an after party for the students that was focused on arts, culture, and innovation. It was all student focused. It had food trucks, it had dancing, it had DJs, it had live music. So it's about how are you helping them to get the resources that they need. We've also found ways to get capital for students and alumni if they stay in the area. Again, that's one of those things. You don't want to choke off their ability to be successful, but at the same time, if they can get the resources that they need and partner with the university is even better, then it's a great outcome if it's good for them.
Just a little bit that's really interesting. So I don't know how familiar you are with Richard Florida's work, the big class or city study. So I think curiously that insight would lead one at the university to want to promote something other than unicorns. And here's what I mean by that. What I'm interested, so what we seem to know, when we think about entrepreneurship and where people go, is that the first job sort of anchors into a location. The first job was in Utah, and we're going to Boulder. This is not enough. So why you might want to be very interested, often the university will might tend to overemphasize things like medical devices or ginormous companies, imagining that this is, imagining that they build one of these, and then things will get better. What Richard's work suggests, and my own work suggests as well, is actually the opposite, which is if you want to keep good talent, you need to non-profit profit. And so one of the things that I do inside my little universe where I can is encourage individuals who have a passion to open a curricular business. Right? This is what we call them. These are trivial businesses, small businesses. They're not at all. Because it turns out these things could in fact be, because they are localized, a seed stock that allows high potential, high individual creatives to stay and grow. Because the challenge is the most talented people have options. That's what means to be really talented. And you have outside options, meaning Maryland, elsewhere. So in order to capture them, rather than one of the things we could imagine in our ecosystem support is actually dog walking centers, coffee shops, all the beautiful things that make living in Palo Alto so awesome. So just a little, I'd love to chat more with anyone who thinks that's interesting to talk about. But that definitely comes through when I think about Lorraine, or what happened with the downtown project, which is Tony Hsieh's Las Vegas attempt to revitalize that downtown core. Tony started with Blazer's research and Richard's research sort of front and center. And step one, build a place that startup founders find enticing to live in, and they will stay.
Still had a comment?
Question, comment. You addressed some of it, but great conversation. Unicorns are by far the exception. Vast majority of companies will never raise money. Vast majority will never be a unicorn. So this is sort of like startup porn, where you can watch it if you want, but reality is far different. And so I think your point is sort of my question is why perhaps the allure, but far too much focus is on sort of high growth startups, which if they're big are good for investors, often not good for people down the equity table. And so how do we shift more of the focus in a structured way away from sort of just busy work that a lot of government programs do to help small businesses become sustainable, get off the ground, grow, get access to capital. How do we turn more of the focus to making those types of programs that already exist, proliferate at the state and federal level, more effective at getting small businesses the access that they need. One of the examples that you gave is that if you have really smart people at your university, because investors in Utah are not making investments that they move, well, that really will be a certain socioeconomic class who had that privilege of moving to a different location. This sort of breaks down into racial issues as well. So how do you deal with getting access where people are?
So this is a good intro into the story I wanted to tell about Rob. No, it's not why it's just for a question. But I've known Rob for almost 30 years, and after we worked together in tech, I went into private equity, and Rob was in academia. We lost track of each other for maybe 5 years. When I ran into Rob on the University of Utah campus, I was this great reunion. He's like, Rob, I've missed you. How have you been? And what are you doing? And Rob said, well, I'm doing this interesting research on entrepreneurship. And I said, well, what is it? And he said, knowing that I didn't know as much as he knows about entrepreneurship, he dumbed it down considerably. I thought it was a good summary. Rob said, well, you know how they have accelerators? And I said, yes. He said, do you know what they do? And I said, I know a little bit. And he said, well, they have space for entrepreneurs, and they take equity in entrepreneurs, and they provide mentors for entrepreneurs. They have competitions for entrepreneurs, and they're about creating companies that the entrepreneurs have. And he said, I don't do any of that. Here's what I'm working on, right? I take a bunch of entrepreneurs and I don't give them any space. We don't give them any equity. And instead of mentors, we organize them into group of peers, and instead of putting them in competitions to see who's the best one, we put them in peer groups and we make them collaborate on their environment. We don't focus on their companies. If they want to kill their companies, we think that's great, and we throw a little party. What we do is we make them into better individuals, and we teach them to do precision execution. And as it turns out, working with Rob on this over the next 10 years because it was so inspiring, a lot of those folks will turn out not to be entrepreneurs, but they'll work in the corporate settings, and they'll become excellent folks at precision execution and get promotions and make the world a better place. Some of them will actually go on to create billion-dollar businesses, but some of them will make the world a better place by creating a dog walking business or a cake shop or something similar. And on occasion, someone will drop out of entrepreneurship and become an artist, which we also think makes the world a better place. I think we're a little bit over time. We'll be here for a bit, but if you need to go, we appreciate your participation today.